Hi, friends. I'm honored to be a guest designer for Not Too Shabby for the month of March. They sent me some of their fabulous March release, and I've created this video showing off the items that they shared with me. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. This first design prominently features three pieces of the absolutely adorable Little Spring Friends Ephemera die cut pieces. I'm going to open up and show you some of this ephemera. They are absolutely adorable. I think the pig has to be my favorite. So I'm actually not going to use it right now because I want to keep it up in my craft area to make me smile. But this ephemera set is just so cute and you're going to fall in love with it. I'm also using the Spring and Bloom 6x6 paper collection. I'm using a sentiment from the stamp set called Sending Spring Smiles. And last but not least, I'm using the Bunny Blush Enamel Dots. I begin by cutting my patterned paper down to an A2 size, putting some double-sided tape on the back of it, and adhering it down to an A2 card panel. You'll notice that I always tuck my double-sided tape under the panel to make sure none of it is showing through. I use a large circle die from a stacking circle set in my stash to cut a large circle. And I then use a smaller circle from the same set to cut out the center of that larger circle. I then take that circle, align it on my paper cutter, and cut it in half. Wondering what I'm using it for? I am creating my own rainbow. I thought it would be fun to just make a very natural rainbow, and so I used those circle dies to create it. I then come in with some acrylic paint markers and start to fill in the colors. You can use whatever colors you'd like, but I'm using the standard Roy G. Biv. And I start with my red, go into my orange, then into yellow, then into green, then into a light blue, a dark blue, and finally our violet or purple. It doesn't matter if all of these shades are the same exact size or not. After all, this is a handmade card. I try to make it as approximate as I can, but there are certainly going to be some that end up being larger than others, and that is a-okay. This coloring moves along pretty quickly. Once the coloring's done, I take a shimmer pen and go ahead and just brush over it to add a nice bit of shimmer and sparkle to the rainbow. I then align my pieces on the card panel to make sure that they're going to fit where I'd like them and to determine where I'd like to put my sentiment. I now know that I want it to be right in the bottom center of that card panel. So I place it onto my MISTI, make sure it's securely down, put my sentiment stamp on there, pick it up, and then stamp it with black ink. The sentiment stamp also has these cute little flowers on the included on it. So I decided to stick with the rainbow theme and color the flowers in a rainbow color palette. So I take out some gel glitter pens and I color the petals red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. And I color the leaves green as well. Next up is putting some double-sided foam tape strips onto the back of the rainbow to make sure that it has some depth and is elevated off of the panel. I use 3 going around it, but you can use as many as you'd like. You may also choose to just glue it down. It's really up to you. But wherever I can add some depth, I like to do so. I peel off the backing and stick the rainbow in place, going right above our sentiment. I then put some glue onto the back of the first piece of ephemera and go ahead and align it and press it down. I repeat and do the same thing with the third, making sure to leave room for the one in the middle. Once I have those in place, I flip it over and wipe off the excess glue to make sure that it doesn't stick to anything and ruin our card before it's done. And then I go ahead and put the last piece in place. I think they look really cute standing on top of the rainbow. I adhere a few of the enamel dots. I decide to do one of the largest, one of the medium, and one of the smallest. And just like that, this adorable Get Well card is finished. I love the shimmer. I think the characters are absolutely adorable, and it's just so bright and cheery. Our second card is a super easy sliding window card. To create it, I used the Sending Spring Smiles stamp set, which is the March stamp set of the month. I used our Bunny Blush enamel dots and once again the Spring in Bloom 6x6 paper pad. I used 2 of the patterned papers that are pink in color because I think it screams spring. I cut the front panel down to an A2 size, take a large stacking circle die, approximately put it in the center, and then tape it down into place so that I can run it through my die cut machine. This will create that window in the front of the card through which we'll be able to lift up the inside piece and reveal the inner side, inside of it. I then die cut a circle that is slightly larger, so one size up from the one I used on the front panel to cut the piece that will be the sliding window component. I want it to be a little bit larger so that I know it's going to completely cover the panel. And then I use that same die to cut out a piece of watercolor paper. I then use a smaller circle die and that same pink plaid piece of paper to cut out the little piece, which is a tab that's going to lift up the slider. I put my watercolor paper circle down onto my MISTI and then go ahead and arrange the stamps how I'd like to have them placed. I play around with them a bit to find where I think is the best fit for the scene that I'm looking to create. Feel free, you take your time and make sure that you're happy because really you only have this one chance to make sure that your layout is going to be perfect. I decided to use watercolor paper for this, even though I'm using alcohol markers to color, because I love the way that this paper shows off a scene, and it's really a great medium for your alcohol markers as well. So I go ahead and stamp those pieces using some black ink. Next up, I fold over the front of my A2 card base and stamp another sentiment on the inside of the card. This step is optional, but I thought since I have the real estate to do it, and there's several great sentiments, why not? Now comes the fun part, the coloring of the scene. You're going to see that I start with outlining some of the parts of the bunny with a darker gray, and then I'm going to come in with a lighter gray and blend it together. This creates a really natural shadow effect and just makes the bunny super adorable. And you'll notice that I do this with a lot of the colors I'm going to be using, that I'll lay down one shade and then I'll come in with another. When it comes to the sky, I'll use a blue and then I'll come in with a lighter blue to make sure it's all blended together. And then when I put down the grass, I'm going to use a green and then go over that with a yellow just to make it a nice light spring shade of green grass. I'm going to go ahead and play some music while I do the rest of my coloring. You'll note that I did just use a white gel pen to color in the bunny's tail, which I think is really cute. And when I add the clouds in to the sky, once the sky is colored, I'm actually using a white acrylic marker and just tapping to create the outline of some nice wispy puffy clouds. coloring done, I can now get to the assembly part. So when I had said I was doing the circle for the coloring bigger, you can see that when I place that front panel over, it's going to cover the whole thing. So I decide where I want to place my circle and use a pencil to make a dot. I then adhere some double-sided tape onto the back of the circle and set it down into place on the card base. And I just go ahead and align it with where that pencil mark is and press it down. Next up is to add some double-sided foam tape to the back of the front panel. And so when you're doing this, you just want to make sure that you are putting foam into place where it's not going to interfere with pulling up and putting back into place the sliding cover to the window. So you'll see that I go ahead and put the window down and then decide where I'm going to put the foam tape to keep the window from rolling from side to side, and to also make sure that it's going to stop at an appropriate place and not fall down into the card. So here I am just placing those foam tape strips strategically, cutting them down where they need to be trimmed, and then I'll go ahead and pull off the backing. You can see as I line it up that that looks perfect. The window goes down and comes up, and there's no issue. I then use some craft glue to glue my little circle tab into place on top of the larger circle, and that's going to act as our pulling mechanism to make sure that we slide that window up and down. I then align my panel and stick it into place, put my window in, and then go ahead and add some of the really pretty enamel dots. And here it is, the big reveal. Ta-da! There's our card. I think it's adorable. I love how the pink interacts with a darker shade and a lighter shade, and it's just an adorable scene. For the third card, I am using the Little Notes stamp set, which is the March free with $60 incentive stamp. I think it's absolutely adorable. I'll also be using a sheet of paper from the Spring in Bloom paper collection, as well as the pink plaid circle I didn't use in card 2, some watercolor paper, an A2 card base, and our enamel dots. I begin by putting some double-sided tape onto the back of my card panel and putting it into place. I absolutely love the design of this particular paper. It has light writing in the background and a beautiful floral. I then use a circle die to go ahead and cut my watercolor circle for stamping and coloring. I align it in my MISTI, and once happy, I close my MISTI, add some black ink, and stamp this adorable image into place. This is one of the sweetest and cutest stamp sets I've seen in a long time. This little porcupine and the little bird are just absolutely adorable, and they are bound to make a recipient smile. And then it's time to color. Similar to my explanation for card 2, I use some darker colors around the edge and then blend them in. Instead of discussing and telling you the same thing over again, I'm going to play some music while I am coloring. I use my circle to determine where I'd like to put the sentiment, and once I know I have the panel placed in my MISTI, and I stamp the sentiment with black ink. I then use some double-sided foam tape strips on the back of my circle, take off the backing, and put it down into place on my card panel. I tend to use a lot of adhesive on my cards. Some may say that I'm an over-adheser, not to be confused with an overachiever, of course. Sorry for the bad humor. That's just me. I then place the circle into place on my card. I add a few of the really cute bunny blush enamel dots onto the front of my card. And just like that, our third design is complete, and it is absolutely adorable. I just love this card. A big thank you to Jamie and Not Too Shabby for allowing me to be a guest designer this month. I really hope that they and you enjoy these designs that I made with their adorable products. Are you following me on social media? If not, why not give me a follow? Thanks for watching.